Welcome. I'm Jack Llewellyn from the Durango Chamber of Commerce, and I believe this is the 22nd year of the Wells Group Real Estate Forecast. Thank you, John Wells and Bob Allen, for your time and energy for this year's update. But first, we can't do this without our sponsors. John, who are our sponsors this year?
Well, thank you, Jack. Of course, very important to have our sponsors that help us a lot with this production, and we couldn't do it without them. That's this year in no particular order. That's TBK Bank, Bank of Colorado, Bank of the San Juans, Alpine Bank, Amos Mortgage Company, Mountain Mortgage Company, American Ag Credit, Bank Central, the Malone team, and Norm Phillips' team, the Draper Kramer Mortgage. Thanks again to them, and Jack, thank you. This is the first time we've had it moderated, and we're really excited to have you help us with this year.
Well, I'm happy to do this because every year I learn so much with all the statistics and the data you guys provide, and I've been in Durango 40 years, and I have to be honest, what has happened since 2020, I don't think any of us would have ever imagined. So I'm just wondering, can people afford a home right now, and how is the market going to address the shortage and inventory drought that we're seeing?
Well, drought's a good word, Jack. We're experiencing a drought, as you know, in a climate perspective, but also in an inventory perspective. And 43 years of doing this in La Plata County, this is the lowest inventory I've seen in that entire time. That being said, we certainly know that we have a lot of construction that's occurring, but nothing like we saw pre-2008 in the Great Recession. We still don't have as many builders as we had at that time frame. And so that, of course, restricts the supply. So we have a lot of challenges. Building cost, material supplies, supply chain issues. That being said, there's certainly attempts to get the product to market, but it's not inexpensive, and that's being created real pressure for many purchasers of real estate.
You know, and along that line too, we keep hearing about workforce housing, attainable housing. How are the workers, especially the service providers, going to be able to afford? So what's going on to create more workforce housing?
Well, I think the city and the county, both municipalities, city, county, city of Durango, town of Bayfield, town of Ignacio, they all recognize that we're sort of in an emergency response mode where we've got to create some housing, and they're going to start trying to approve some projects, and they have done that. They're responding, and there's some activity in the city. Recent announcement of north of 400 units that they've got and they've approved. They have more than 1,000 units in that pipeline. Town of Bayfield has north of 600, 700 units, and they're planning in development pipeline. So things are looking good. Plata County also has some projects where they're going to try to get those projects through the planning pipeline and start to get those approved. The downside is that's not going to happen. You won't see any shovels turn for at least another year, except for some of these conversions, hotel to apartment conversions, which are already in place. And so it's going to take some time for that to happen. So we're going to be faced with this inventory problem for at least another year.
So now let's look at outside, countywide and the rural county area outside the municipalities. So what are we seeing there?
You know, the supply in the county, as John mentioned, is as low as either he or I have ever seen it. We've never seen this few properties available for sale countywide. And the demand is almost as strong as we've ever seen it. So when you look at that supply, it's down 60% from last year, yet the demand's up 12%. That demand would probably be up even more if we had that supply. If you look at strictly housing, the supply of single-family units and condos and townhomes is way down 50% from where it was last year, and last year was down almost 50% from the year before that. So there's a decline in that supply, yet that demand is very strong. And so what we see is that value has increased. Last year, the total dollar volume went up by 40% here in La Plata County. That's a huge increase. $1.6 billion in sales. Never seen that in La Plata County in my 35 years in my business. That drives single-family home prices. Single-family home prices countywide are up 20% from last year, up from 500 to 600,000. Those are big increases. I'm not sure how that's going to change a whole lot because we just don't have much for sale.
Now, looking now internally down at the city of Durango, what are we experiencing?
In town is the same story. The supply for single-family homes is way down to, last time I looked, it was about 20 or 30 homes for sale. And of those homes, something like 60, 70% of them are under contract. So there aren't a lot of homes available for people to actually buy. On the demand side, that demand is really strong. That demand was kind of flat here in the last year, but that's because the supply has been so low. And that supply, that low supply, strong demand in the city, like in the county, resulted in a big increase, 20% of the median home price in town. The same thing for the townhomes. The townhomes activity is actually a little bit more remarkable, and from my perspective, the number of townhome sales has been pretty steady for the last 4 years, and the values have continued to increase. But as of February, there were only 29 townhomes available. 25 of those were under contract, and of those 25, something like 10, 12 haven't even been built yet. So that market is really strong. The demand on the townhome sales is really strong. So I expect that to continue.
Now, in Durango, the pricing, are you seeing people moving further out and doing the commute? What's going on in Bayfield?
Yeah, Bayfield's the same story. The supply has declined by a lot. There's not a lot for sale over there. Their supply is down 40% in the last year, and the number of homes for sale as of the end of December were 5. And of those 5 homes for sale, 4 of them were under contract. So really there was only 1 home at that time in the town of Bayfield available for purchase. That demand, it's leveled out a little bit, but as you can tell, that's primarily because of a lack of supply. And that has resulted, just like everywhere else, in an increase in that single-family median home price. Over in Bayfield, it's about 15%.
Wow. So homes are going up in prices. The supply and demand. What about vacant land? Are we seeing the same thing occurring there?
Yeah, vacant land, the same story. The supply has dropped by almost 40% here in the last year. It dropped by about the same amount between 2020 and 2021. The demand for vacant land has actually gone up considerably more. It's gone up about 30% here in the last year, and it was up substantially between 2019 and 2020. So the land activity has been very strong. A lot of people who are faced with the inability to buy a home because of that lack of supply, they're going to buy a lot. Hopefully, they can build a home. Vacant land sales price distribution. If you look at this chart, the first 3 bars of this chart are 2019, 2020, and 2021 sales. You can look at the black line is the 2021 sales. It's high, it's strong. And then you move forward to the blue line, and that's what's available as of February 10th. Well, that's supply in that lower price range below, say, $500,000 or $600,000. There's not much land available for sale. That's a big change from what we've seen in the past. So the amount of land, the amount of residential product, even on the commercial side, the supply overall, as we started out, is very low, and that's resulted in price increase.
Also, we talk about, construction later. If you buy the land and you're just finding a builder to build it, that's also going to be an issue. We'll talk about that more later, but what about the luxury home market?
The luxury home market was as strong as it's been since I've been in the business, 35 years. Luxury residential sales were up about 80% in 2021 versus 2020. About 48% of those sales were cash sales. That's not necessarily abnormal, but that means that there's a lot of cash out there to buy very expensive homes. The vacant land market above $1 million was also very strong, up almost 30% between 20 and 21. That's a remarkable move. the Purgatory area, the recreational market, which is also a little bit of a luxury market. Purgatory had a record year last year. Their sale transactions were up 30% last year, and their residential sales were up 67%. Vacant land was up 33%. The dollar volume for vacant land was up 100%, 107%. Single-family residential dollar volume was up 115%. That means those values are climbing by a lot compared to where they were. See the same activity up in the Tamaron Glacier Club area, which is a luxury market, and their vacant land sales were up 123% last year. That's a huge increase. Their single-family residential sales were up 25%. That's a huge increase. Total dollar volume went from almost 60 million to almost 90 million between 20 and 21. Those are huge increases in those markets. So it's been, 2021 was a remarkably strong year, shockingly strong year from my perspective.
Jack, just probably 3 short years ago when Bob and I did that forecast, the years of inventory for luxury product was 7 to 9 years of inventory.
Wow.
Now it's less than 7 months probably of inventory. For the luxury product, that's $1 million plus. So that change has just been exponential in regards to the demand for this product, which is, as long as we've done this, it still surprises us in the industry.
And second home ownership, what are we seeing there with recapping that?
Well, second home ownership has been a big driver, and a big driver for the luxury market. We don't want to sound like 3 older, mature guys, but we are, and we've been in the community for a long time. But we have seen exponential change compared to other discoveries of Durango from people wanting to live part-time or full-time in Durango and La Plata County. And why? Many of our younger brokers share with me, well, social media wasn't here 20 years ago. Social media exposes this product and this lifestyle to so many people nationwide, worldwide, that it's amazing to many of us that where we see people coming from. Of course, COVID, the pandemic, increased our attention because of our quality of life in this community. And because of that, we will see continued growth in that second home, vacation home marketplace.
I'm kind of going back on my economic days at Fort Lewis College, taking an Economics 101, and supply and demand is really driving what the market's seeing. Now, do you want to add to that?
No, it is very basic economics. You're absolutely correct.
It's something I did remember from
Yes.
college, so that's important. I also want to ask, the population growth and migration, because that also contributes to this with people coming in from outlying areas. What are we seeing there?
Well, it's been enhanced again with the pandemic and with the technology that we have in today's world. People work from anywhere. Many people do, not everybody, but there's the ability to work from home. There's the ability to work from Durango, Colorado, even if your base employer is in a metropolitan area, in some major metropolitan area anywhere in the United States, even the world for that matter. And so we have become discovered again from the standpoint of quality of life, where people can move here, work, and possibly commute once in a while to their primary employment location. That's part of it. The second part, though, is the second home, vacation home puts pressures on the inventory. It takes some of that inventory off the market that possibly those individuals living and working in Durango and the surrounding areas have to compete with that second home, vacation home buyer. And so it just compounds things in the sense of the attainable price points.
Well, you talk about attainable with workforce housing and everything. I want to go deeper dive into what the city and county are doing to assist with workforce housing. What are we seeing there?
Well, and Bob can add to this, but as he mentioned, it's definitely on the forefront of our city and county government's minds. Fort Lewis College, any of the large employers are working on alternatives to figure out the attainability for workforce housing, and the town of Bayfield and Ignacio. So That's positive, but as Bob said, it's probably 24, 36 months before that product is available to be utilized and occupied. So we have a compounding problem here for the next several months. That being said, the city is working on a project supporting a conversion of a hotel motel property in 160 West that will help add some inventory, likely late this year or next year when that could be habitable. The county's working on a few projects as well in the county that they've identified for workforce housing. Bayfield has some products that are identified. So we see traction that we haven't seen before. And it's not a fault of the government of not being there before. Bob, I can tell you that in 2008 and 9, before 2009, it had risen to the top of attention for city county governments, college, the hospitals, school districts. And then with the recession, it kind of took a backseat. But now it's upon us in spades.
And where are we seeing inbound buyers? Where are they coming from?
Our inbound buyers are pretty traditional, as Bob has collected statistics for decades. And so certainly we have Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, some California, certainly Florida, and then it's just around all over. Plus, of course, I don't want to forget the Front Range, basically everything on the other side of the Continental Divide. There are people that move to our area, Southwest Colorado, for this lifestyle because of how populated that Front Range has become. But those are all our traditional feeder markets. But as I mentioned, we have some people that have arrived here from Europe. We have people that are coming from the Northeast. We didn't used to see that very much. So again, because of the ability for Durango to be so known through the social media and other avenues, we have been discovered.
I think also, I've heard people say that I wanted to retire, I wanted to move to Durango, and then you take COVID on top of that, and that just accelerated that process and said, you know what, I'm tired of the lifestyle, the traffic, those things, and I want to go to a rural area, and Durango's on their radar.
Durango is one of many communities. We're not the only one,
Yep.
and that's probably thankful because we can't handle everybody would love to move here. But yes, that's the case. But at the same time, it creates an issue for the workforce. And the workforce, I believe, is there's more pressure on the workforce to consider relocating outside the county. I mean, if you think about it, excuse me, the median priced home in February in La Plata County, not just Durango, which is higher, Plata County is $522,000. The median price in Montezuma County, so primarily Cortez, the biggest population area, is $300,000. And then if you go to San Juan County, which is Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington, it's $206,000, less than half the price of a median price in Durango. So we do see more and more residents that choose to live there and work in Durango by necessity.
Now, Bob, what's going on with employment in the county? Because that also is adding to the factors, and unemployment rate is so low right now.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of us will recognize that our coveted restaurants haven't been able to stay open 7 days a week because they're all having a tough time finding employees. Our employment appears to have leveled out for several months since the beginning of the pandemic. And coupled with a very low unemployment rate right now, a lot of different employers are having a tough time finding employees. And that's an issue when they want to find employees to bring them into La Plata County. Where are they going to live? You've got a list of companies online that show, north of 50, 40 openings right now, and they can't fill them. And that's challenging. Our employment numbers are challenging for, just like they are nationwide though. That's happening across the country where the unemployment rate's very low and companies are having a tough time and they're competing for quality employees. The job growth, what's going to happen, from the state demographer standpoint, is going forward, I think we're going to see continued growth in that tourism sector. The tourism sector continues to be our strongest sector in terms of the total dollar amount it contributes to our local economy. But the retiree-generated jobs, think Social Security, think healthcare, think the medical profession, those jobs are growing very fast here, and they've grown very fast in the last 10 years, and they're going to continue to grow very fast. The other thing that's started to creep into our market because of the wealth generation, because of the interest in the housing above $1 million, we've got investment income and wealth that's growing pretty quickly here in La Plata County as well.
Now let's hear from Eva Henson, the City of Durango's Housing Innovation Manager. We're going to see how she sees the City of Durango working to address this growing need.
Some of the city's ongoing efforts currently to address the housing crisis in Durango, we have a nationally recognized ADU program as well as our vacation rental program to help preserve our housing stock that currently exists in our city. We are also looking at our Fair Share program and how we can certainly change that program. Right now it's for new developments for ownership, but we'll be looking at the rental opportunities as well because those are currently exempt. So currently there are about 569 affordable units in the city of Durango. Those primarily are rental or ownership. The city is currently looking at 1,230 units that are currently in the review process, approved process, or have been recently submitted. The City Council actually at their most recent City Council meeting on February 15th approved 3 new apartment rental projects that would add another 472 rental units to our community. So the city really is looking at a multi-tool approach. There isn't a silver bullet really right now to target affordable housing. So the city's looking at a variety of strategies around increasing production and producing affordable units. Some of that might be looking at our regulations around applications and processes, as well as trying to work and collaborate with public and private partnerships. A lot of affordable and attainable housing requires subsidies, so we continue to monitor and track some of those federal and state monies that are coming down the pipeline. A lot of those opportunities the city can certainly apply and get those grant funding versus a private developer. So the federal and grant state opportunities, often the local jurisdiction, the local government has to apply for those and then could offset some of the developers' infrastructure costs as long as they would, potentially do affordable and workforce housing, such as a deed restriction on some of those units. So that's a key component to get some of those monies.
Thanks, Eva. And I want to dive into what's going on with construction, because with all the demand and everything that's going on with homes that are currently built, what are we seeing in the construction business? Do we have people to build the new homes?
Well, first of all, the construction market is hit with some rising costs. This particular slide refers to lumber costs, and I can tell you I looked today and it's more like $1,100 per random length. So it's very high, it's been volatile, and even if it drops a little bit, it'll be sticky to the downside. So you won't see the retail pricing on a local basis come down like you might see on the wholesale side. So our construction costs are going to stay high. Construction costs are also high because of those employment slides. There aren't a lot of general contractors. There aren't a lot of employees in the construction trades, so we need more of both, and they face the same problem that everyone else faces: housing. Where are they going to live? So the total residential units permitted in all of La Plata County saw a nice little bump here in 2021 from 2020, but it's not what it used to be. We're not close to where we used to be, and we need to see that go up. And that went up primarily because of rural county. Out in the rural county, their residential building permits went up about 43%. That's a big change, and that's nice to see out there in La Plata County. Same is not true in the city. The city went up 40%, but it went up from 54 to 76 single-family homes. That's not enough. We're strapped for some single-family lots. We don't have enough probably to build on, but again, we don't have enough contractors to build on those lots. So that's something we're going to need, is some vacant lots in the city of Durango. Twin Buttes has some, Three Springs has some, but we don't have quite enough to meet that demand. On the multifamily residential construction side, that's one of the critical areas that we're missing. That's just been too low for too long. You see that bump in 2017, and that was a big part of that was the Rocket Point apartments, which were about 194 units. So that happened in 2017, and you can see what the result of that was 2 years later. Our vacancy rate went up because we added more supply. Supply and demand works. That law has not been repealed, and it's going to continue to work. So go back to that slide in 2017, we saw a big uptick in units permitted, but then for the next 4 years, we saw a decline and we didn't see many units permitted, and then we saw this huge demand, and our vacancy rate went down to 1-2%. As most people in this room know, it's really hard to find a rental product right now, almost anywhere.
So the housing crisis is certainly a nationwide issue. The city of Durango, it's their top priority to focus on housing and getting housing units developed and built in our community. And so we're addressing that strategically with a multitude of regulations, as well as a proactive and tangible approach to see impactful results. Well, the recent root policy study that was completed at the end of 2020 identified about 600 units need to be coming into the pipeline over time, over a 3 to 5 year period. And so the city is really adamant about getting a variety of expansive housing types, not just workforce and affordable housing. And so I think realistically, we can certainly see probably in the scope of 5 to 1,000 units in the next 2 year time frame. The city is excited actually about a couple of new projects that are being added into the pipeline. One of those would be the Best Western Motel conversion. That would add additional 120 affordable workforce housing type units. That would equivalent to studios, 1 and 2 bedrooms. Those would target 60% area median income or less. The other conversion, hotel conversion, would be the River Roost, formerly known as the Durango, downtown Durango Hotel. That would add another about 80 or so units. And then the Three Springs project over by Three Springs Boulevard would add over 200 rental units. Those would be market rate. But again, 472 units right now in February would be potentially added later this year.
And that's something that Eva Henson had, talked about with some of those additional ideas that she had, and new supply of residential units available for rent, resulting in a very low vacancy rate, which is a low supply. Again, the supply and demand, and increased rental rates, which is creating a strong demand.
That's exactly right. We're seeing rental rates go up and vacancy coming down. It's supply and demand. The supply is low and the demand is strong.
And then what about over in the town of Bayfield, going back to them, what are we seeing for single housing permits in those?
The town of Bayfield has had its ups and downs, but it's been pretty stable since 2017. It's been pretty stable for the last 5 years. Excuse me, but they're not building enough. And they have the opportunity to build enough. I think we're going to hear from somebody over there in the town of Bayfield to talk about that. They actually have a lot of units on a percentage basis in the pipeline that could really help them out a lot.
We are going to hear from Nicole Killian, who is the Town of Bayfield Community Development Director. She has some great information to share with us. So let's hear what Nicole has to say.
One of the exciting things about being a planner in Bayfield right now is Bayfield is going to see a lot of growth, but we're going to see a lot of our workforce housing growth because of the cost of housing prices compared to Durango and the county as a whole. So just based on the development proposals that we have in hand right now, we're looking at 600 potential new units, and with 1,100 units currently, that's a 50% increase in the next 2 to 5 years. So there are quite a few large developments going on in Bayfield right now. Bayfield East Annexation is the largest. It's approximately 150 acres on the northeast side of town. It will have about 300 single-family units, 200 multifamily, and about 500,000 square feet of commercial being proposed right now. And we also have the Mustang Crossing, which is located on the southeast corner of town, and that is 35-acre parcel with 85 single-family lots. We also have a tiny house village called the Marlin Tiny Home Village. They are located just west of Bayfield Parkway. And they are proposing 15 tiny home units that will be owner-occupied units, but on one parcel that will be maintained and owned by the current property owners. And we do have one large commercial project coming into town. It's a 2107 Bayfield Parkway annexation. It's about 16 acres and it's going to be for commercial uses. And that is located on the southwest corner of Highway 160 and Bayfield Parkway. For the two commercial projects that we are currently reviewing, there's proposals for a gas station, a hotel, a new grocery store, and other convenience stores for the community members. And the town of Bayfield just recently bought the Cinnamon Heights subdivision, and that is 30 townhome units that will be deed restricted, working with the Homes Fund. And these units, the town is putting in infrastructure, paying for engineering, doing grading and drainage plans, and hoping to sell these to builders or one builder and have these deed restricted units come in at an affordable, attainable price level. In total, the projects that I currently have on my desk, we have 221 acres of annexations being proposed. We have 462 potential new single-family lots, 209 new multifamily units, 30 deed-restricted units, and 15 tiny homes, as well as approximately 800,000 square feet of commercial coming into the town of Bayfield in the next 1 to 5 years, depending on how the market drives those.
Thanks, Nicole. Now I want to shift gears a little bit and go into the commercial construction, because that's such an integral part. And what are we seeing? Is there anything happening? Because I know warehouses, all of that. What are we seeing in the construction side?
Commercial's been a little slow, and it's fallen quite a bit since 2018, steadily since 2018. And obviously the pandemic had a big impact on the office market, maybe a little bit less of an impact on our local retail market because our downtown is so strong. And we probably need some different sectors that need to be addressed right now, right away. It is a lack of supply, and I would ask the question, is the commercial market undersupplied right now? I happen to think it is.
And what are you seeing, John?
Well, let me just start by saying during the pandemic, we saw a pretty good exodus of office users exit the market. We had people buying out their leases and downsizing. We had people at the end of their lease periods not renewing. We had small month-to-month tenants not renew. And it was pretty impactful, which we can all understand because, in a sense, you weren't supposed to be contacting anybody in the public. You're supposed to be staying at home. And as the pandemic went through different levels, we have seen many things happen. I'll just try to be brief. One is, when you compress everybody in one household working from home and children schooling from home if there's children at home, that, quite honestly, probably increased the housing needs in Durango. People going, we need a bigger house. We can't school from home, work from home, live from home 24/7. So that's part of it. But the other part was we saw some good traction back in the office market. It's not back to where it was, but we see good demand for office because people are getting back into the workforce in a traditional sense. They are growing their companies again. And for those individuals working from home that are not exactly comfortable working at home, many are, but many would rather go to a traditional office environment. So that's positive. From the standpoint of real void, and this has been in existence before the pandemic, we do not have enough office and warehouse space. Quite frankly, warehouse and wareyard with some office, we get calls every week at this brokerage. And people that are in dire need because their businesses have grown. If you think of the service industries and the construction trades and material supplies, those companies have grown exponentially through this real estate boom. And they need to grow their facilities, be it for material storage, for vehicle storage, and we just don't have enough of that product at this time. So there's substantial needs there that need to be met in the near future. So I'll say on the retail side, the retail environment was impacted less than I expected. People were shopping online anyway. They shopped more online when the pandemic started, but I believe people really desire to get back out into the public and to go into resale shops. Certainly we see this with the restaurants. Bob's talked about the unfortunate part is a lot of the restaurants can't be open 7 days a week because of staffing issues, but the restaurants have been doing very well. Downtown Durango, there's 3 vacancies in downtown between 5th Street and 13th Street that are not office spaces. So it's a very strong market at this time.
Well, and I want to point out too, that it sounds like a lot of businesses are now starting to bring their employees back into the office. You sent an article about Google doing this and saying they're requiring in the Bay Area that they're saying, okay, we want you guys to come back to work. And I think we're going to start seeing that because there's a lot of individuals out there that want that interaction and probably get out from underneath the house and the kids and all that and return to that new normal.
One of the things you see in the office market locally is you see a demand for these smaller spaces, you know, in the 500, maybe even less, where you're putting 1 or 2 or 3 people in those offices. And I think what you're finding is, you know, there's a lot of folks that came here and found out that, you know, the internet isn't that great where I am out here, or the cell service isn't that great where I am out here, or, you know, honey, we're jammed in here with you, me, and the kids. I think we need to share an office, and maybe we'll rent that out. So I've started to see in the last 3-4 months a big uptick in rents and people renting small spaces. And you know, not all of it happens in the MLS, and what I see from my perspective on the commercial side is it's a telling tale that there are a lot of folks out there that want to rent those small spaces, and that's starting to happen. We haven't seen the big space movement yet, the big, you know, north of 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. That'll come, but it hasn't come yet. And like the little article I sent you about Google, they're requiring their people to come back starting April. Now, we've had some false starts here in the last 2 years, 3 years, where they said, you got to come back. And then, better not come back. Yeah. But I believe we're going to go back to the office. We're going to have some sort of hybrid that's going to look a little different than it did when we went in. But I can't tell you exactly, you know, 2 or 3 days, whatever it's going to be a week that people are going to be working in the office. But I think we're going to start to benefit from that because we haven't built many new office buildings in Plata County.
You know, at the chamber, it's been nice having people, my employees come back, because I call it the water cooler talk, and it's just nice to have those conversations. So talk about a lot of different issues, but what are some of the issues, John, you see happening now or on the horizon as we move forward, such as like interest rates? What's going on?
Well, certainly a challenge. Last year's real estate forecast, in our predictions, we predicted that in the 3rd and 4th quarter, we would see residential interest rates increase. That didn't happen. Didn't happen for a lot of factors, where the Fed's, you know, policies were at, where the economy was at. We can play a lot of things in there, but certainly we've seen that happen in the 1st quarter of 2022. And it's likely we're going to see those interest rates continue to climb. Now remember, they've been at all-time lows, but we always remember the least amount we paid for a gallon of gas. You know, it's just human nature to remember those low points, to have coffee with somebody and say, hey, I got a mortgage for 2.1%, and that's not the rate today. But it's still an attractive interest rate, but it still puts pressure on primarily those individuals, working couples, working families, that every dollar counts. So that interest rate goes up, the attainability for that product gets compressed. So we see that as a threat to part of our community. So mortgage interest rates. Other important things Bob will touch on that are you know, really strong indicators that we've enjoyed. Bob?
Yeah, the tourism business, as we spoke about earlier, is still the strongest, most important economic factor in Durango. And our tourism business in 2021 was darn near record-setting. The train had a record year, and Purgatory and Mesa Verde also had great years. And while the data wasn't exactly available for me from the City of Durango sales tax and lodgers tax, I know as of today I've seen the numbers, and the City of Durango's sales tax set a new record, and we're up something like 15 or 16%. I'm sure it'll come out in the paper. And so those are all good indicators of how strong our local economy's been. The airport's been really strong. The airport, the passenger in and out, coming in and out of that airport set a record in 2021 compared to where we've been. It was up 2% over 2019, which was a strong uptick. The energy industry has been doing pretty well here in the last few months, and given the issues we've got with this event in Ukraine, we'll probably see that price of natural gas stay a little elevated compared to where it's been. But you can see that there's a lot of folks in La Plata County that get money, that get income from their mineral interests, from their royalty interests in La Plata County. And that's a big positive for La Plata County. For a while they were strapped, they just weren't getting the same kind of income. Well, that's changed in the last few months.
It's kind of, Christy Zeller always referred to as their monopoly money, you know, and it's going to fluctuate with the prices of natural gas. So John, are there any other significant factors that you believe are going to play a major role in the real estate market? And what do you see?
Sure. You know, this doesn't seem like it's related to real estate and home ownership or home rental access, but you know, child care cost is a big thing. Again, if you're single, you're a couple without children, this is not an impact. But if there's a family, a single parent or married couple that has 1 or 2 or 3 children, the financial burden of child care, preschool is really substantial. That's one thing. Second thing is access. Most every one of these facilities has a waiting list. So that is difficult if it's 2 people that need a double income to make ends meet. Oftentimes one of those partners is choosing or has to stay at home to take care of the children. And weighing the differential of what they could earn in the marketplace and what they're paying has gotten to be really tight. So we feel that's really a difficult thing. We wish there was a simple cure. I don't know there is, other than we need more child care. There's a demand for it. There's an opportunity in the marketplace. Same problem. Where are you going to get the employees? Where are you going to get the facility? But there is an opportunity there. At the same time, that's a big threat to our market. Millennials, you know, I'm not going to joke about millennials. I think for a decade and plus, people have joked about millennials. But
Joke about old guys.
Yeah, we'll joke about old guys. But if you go back to in the Great Recession, it was true that a lot of millennials that recently got out of college or got out of high school possibly stayed at home. You know, they said, well, we've got millennials living in the basement, was the statement. There's also, as I know with my millennial son in Denver, when he got out of college, he had roommates. They rented a house, so they had a little more elbow room than just an apartment. But 3 or 4 guys got together, split the rent because of the affordability factor. That's what they needed to do based on their entry-level incomes they were making. Now, flash forward. A lot of these millennials are been saving money. They are not living at home. They're not living with roommates. They're possibly getting married or living with a significant other. And that has put pressure on the housing market, even here in Durango, where millennials are a big part of our buying pool. And that's the good news. The bad news is they're also buying into a pool that's shrinking more and more in regards to inventory.
I think too, you know, with the average age is decreasing, showing the millennials are moving into our area to enjoy the amenities that we have. All right, it's time now to get out the crystal ball and look into that and tell us what you see in the real estate market unfolding and moving forward in 2022.
Well, it's probably already been said with the discussions today with Bob's insights and your input as well, but clearly the inventory challenge is not going away. As Bob said, it's great to see the list of properties and rental product that is on the books to be built. Possibly some of it even now being permitted. But if it was permitted today, let's say apartment project, it's 12 months at least, 12, 16 months before it's occupiable. If it's single family or townhouse product, it's 8 to 12 months because of supply chain issues, not just the cost of that product. So to catch up with our demand, we're certainly through this year and probably beyond behind the curve, which will continue to put pressure on prices, even with interest rate increases. So we predict that's going to be a challenge for the entire 2022. Secondly, attainable housing. I think, as we mentioned earlier, and we appreciate the city and county and town of Bayfield and Nashua having it as a top priority. I recall being at a council meeting, city council meeting, and I believe when they're setting their goals, it is #1 goal for 2022 in regards to the housing crunch. In fact, the list that Bob had has job vacancies on the city of Durango that they can't place.
Right.
You know, so they certainly experience it in-house as well. So the attainable housing, both for rent and for ownership, are big challenges that we're going to see. And unfortunately, that's going to push many people to commute further and further away, be it Montezuma County, possibly San Juan County, probably not Archuleta County so much because of distance and the highway itself. But we have already seen that, as Bob's slides indicate. Out-migration has gone to San Juan County. It has gone to Montezuma County. And the difficulty with that, let me just speak to this, is you're less and less part of the community when you drive home and you're 30 minutes to an hour away to come back to be engaged with boards or organizations or nonprofits or events. It's difficult. So we certainly feel that we need to continue to have our eye on the ball to see what we can do to take care of that. And last, the exponential increase in the number of second home, vacation home buyers. Again, with my brokers in this office, they said, John, social media is big. I'm not a big social media follower, but when you think about it, when it gets out there on the World Wide Web, people see it anywhere they're located. They're able to follow the inventory. Today, I met with some folks that said, we saw this home go on the market yesterday. We want to see it this morning. And I said, where'd you see it? And they said, on the internet. You know, they have a little search set up through the provider that they're using. So the social media and the traditional marketing and the rediscovery of Durango. We've been discovered so many times in our careers here in La Plata County, but we are seeing a larger number of people discover Southwest Colorado, which will continue to promote and generate more second home, vacation home buyers.
Right. And one more quick thing too, when you mentioned San Juan County, we're thinking San Juan County, New Mexico.
Yes, thanks for clarifying
to the
that.
south, not to the north. And then also when workers come into Durango, La Plata County, they're working, they not only are not engaging as much with socializing, but they're also taking their paycheck back to wherever they're, and so that takes
Absolutely.
the money, the revenue out of the area. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to let you thank the sponsors, and we'll wrap this up for this year's forecast.
Well, again, we appreciate the sponsors. We've had many of them with us since we started having sponsors. That would be TBK Bank, Bank of Colorado, Bank of the San Juans, Alpine Bank, Animas Mountain Mortgage, and American Ag Credit, Bank Central, the Malone team, and the Norm Phillips team with Draper and Kramer Mortgage. So thanks again to our great sponsors. We appreciate that. Also, we need to thank you, the viewer, for taking time out of your busy lives to watch this forecast, the 22nd annual real estate forecast. We hope there's value in it. But the most important thing is we have 42 professional full-time real estate brokers. They're available at any time. You can contact any of our brokers, and they can respond to any questions you have about the forecast, about questions you have, concerns you might have, thoughts you have, and they're excited to respond to you because they're involved with this market on an everyday basis and they're certainly aware of all these trends. So we want you to know that you have access to any of us at any time. Don't call Bob at any time because we're not paying him to do that. But thank you to Preston Benson, videography. We appreciate him doing this production today. And of course, thanks to Bob Allen for 22 years. If we had an audience, we'd applaud him right now, so applaud him from your screen for contributing all this knowledge and expertise and data that you've done for now 22 years. Hard to believe. Of course, we appreciate Eva Henson, with the City of Durango for her insight, as well as Nicole Killian with the town of Bayfield. It's great to have their input. And most of all, to finish with, thanks, Jack, for being
pleasure.
a moderator. I mean, you kind of try to keep Bob and I on time, and people out there appreciate that.
Actually, the most important thing is to thank John and the Wells Group
Yes.
for putting this on for the last 22 years. It's been a fantastic program. I think it really benefits the community. So thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. And from the Wells Group, thank all of you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your business.